Say sorry or stay out. Mom said, closing the door. My sister laughed from inside, maybe you'll freeze. They thought I'd keep quiet. But when the teacher saw my hands, her face changed. The next day, CPS showed up. The wind was howling like a living creature that night, and the snow was falling so hard it stung my face every time it hit. I stood on the front porch of our Minnesota home, trembling so violently I could barely keep my knees from buckling. My breath came out in thick clouds that were instantly whipped away by the freezing air. My gloved hands were pressed against the locked door. The wood icy under my fingers inside, the warm yellow light of the hallway glowed invitingly, but it might as well have been 1,000 miles away behind that door. My sister Lila's voice floated out, mocking and sweet all at once as she called over her shoulder to my parents. She said something I could not quite make out, followed by the sound of my mother's voice saying, clearly, if you had been nicer to your sister, she wouldn't be doing this. Those words hit harder than the cold. My own mother was not going to open the door. My sister had just locked me outside in the middle of a blizzard, and my parents were siding with her. I banged on the door again, my fists weak from the numbness setting in. Lila laughed from the other side, a sharp sound that seemed to slice through the wind. I could picture her standing there in her favorite sweater, sipping hot cocoa while I stood outside with ice forming in my hair. The storm had swallowed the rest of the neighborhood. The street lamps were barely visible through the curtain of snow, the driveway and yard were buried under thick drifts. I felt my toes go from aching to nothing at all, which I knew was a bad sign. I shouted for my dad, but there was no answer. I shouted again, and finally heard his footsteps, but instead of the door unlocking. His voice came through it, telling me to apologize to Lila if I wanted to come back in. My chest tightened with both anger and fear. Apologize for what, I asked, but no one answered. The cold was starting to slow my thoughts, making everything feel heavy and far away. I remembered hearing on the news how quickly frostbite could set in on nights like this. The idea that my own family would leave me out here until I complied with some twisted idea of respect was almost harder to believe than the fact that my body was starting to shut down. I pounded again on the door using the last bit of strength in my arms, my vision blurred from the snowflakes whipping into my eyes. I could hear the muffled sounds of the TV inside, the occasional burst of laughter from Lila, the clink of mugs on the kitchen counter. Every sound reminded me of the warmth and safety just beyond my reach, and how deliberately they were denying it to me. The pain in my fingers grew sharper for a moment before disappearing into a deep nothingness that terrified me more than the ache had I pressed my forehead against the door and whispered please. Before I realized I was speaking, my mother's voice came again from farther inside, saying, leave her. She'll learn her lesson. The words were calm but final. I knew then that no one was coming for me. Something broke inside me in that moment, not just my trust in them, but the last fragile thread of hope that maybe they cared. That night, the snow froze my skin, but it also froze whatever was left of my belief that family meant protection. I turned away from the door, not because I wanted to but because I understood I might have to save myself if I wanted to see another morning. Our family looked perfect from the outside. The Carters had the 2-story white house with green shutters, a well-kept lawn in the summer and a pristine driveway in the winter. My father, Robert Carter, was the respected branch manager of the local bank. My mother, Susan, taught second grade at the elementary school and always had a smile ready for parents and neighbors. Lila, my older sister, was the shining star of our little town's high school. She was captain of the cheerleading squad homecoming queen last year and the kind of girl who never walked down the hall without being greeted by at least 5 different people. Then there was me, Emily Carter, quiet, bookish, never the center of attention unless it was for getting the highest grade in class or winning an academic competition. My achievements didn't come with banners or pep rallies. They were the kind of things you put on a college application, not the kind of things that made you popular in the school cafeteria. From as early as I can remember, Lila had been my parents' pride and joy. It wasn't just favoritism, it was a hierarchy. She was the queen and I was expected to be the supporting act. When I was 6, she accidentally spilled orange juice on my school project the morning it was due. Mom said she didn't mean it. When I was 12, she told my best friend that I'd said mean things about her, and that friendship ended overnight. Mom said I shouldn't have trusted anyone with secrets. At 15, I saved up for months to buy a dress for a school dance. The day before, I found it in the trash shredded. Dad said it was probably a misunderstanding and that pattern became the foundation of my life. Lila hurt me. My parents excused her, and I was expected to keep the peace. But recently, things had shifted. I had been working towards something big. The State Scholars Award winning, it would almost guarantee me a full scholarship to one of the top universities in the country. It was a goal I'd been chasing for years, and in November, I achieved it. I beat out every other senior in our district, including Lila's boyfriend, who had been sure he would win. The local paper even ran a short article about me. People congratulated me in the halls, and for the first time in years, I felt seen. Lila's reaction was swift and icy. At first, it was subtle, a sarcastic comment here, a dismissive shrug there, but I could see it building. Every time someone mentioned my award, her jaw tightened. I overheard her telling her friends I had no life and that the award was just for nerds who spend every Friday night alone. I didn't care what she thought. I cared about getting my college application finished, printing my essays and sending them out on time, which is why the week before Christmas, I bundled up and walked through the snow to the town library to use their printer. When hours mysteriously stopped working, the sky was already a bruised gray when I started the walk back, wind whipping the snow into my face until my scarf was crusted with ice. When I got to our driveway, the snow was up to my calves. I trudged up to the porch, relief flooding me as I reached for the door. It didn't open. I knocked, then pounded the door, cracked open just enough for Lila's face to appear. She was smiling, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Her hair was perfectly curled, her sweater spotless, and she had a mug of cocoa in her hand. What's the magic word?